Going on YouTube, BDKane721. I am making a video of my 2019 Baseball Card Hall of Fame votes for Ray from Philly. He's having his yearly, I guess this was the second annual class. I think last year was the first class. I did not participate in last year's voting. Sorry about that. But I wanted to put my votes out there for this year. As with most everyone else, I'll probably be voting for similar cards. Um, Having grown up in the 80s and collecting in the 1980s, especially in the late 80s, there were a bunch of cards that I would consider Hall of Fame candidates, but others would not, depending on when you started collecting and what kind of stuff you collect. So I think that's what makes this so unique, in my opinion, and such a great thing to do for our community. It really does show off some cards that maybe have gotten lost, over the years. And so there's a couple in my list that I think people may or may not agree with. To me, they're Hall of Fame cards, mainly because of my history, and but to others they may not be. But I think that's what makes this great. So let me get into it. First off, most definitely the 1986 Donruss Jose Canseco rookie card, rated rookie, is definitely a Hall of Fame worthy card in my book. I know it got some votes last year. I'm pretty sure it got some votes last year, and it's certainly getting some this year. So I think this is a no-brainer. Don't really need to go into the reasons why. I think everybody knows that this card was an absolute monster in the 1980s. Um, Not so much now, but still desirable by a lot of collectors out there. So I think it's definitely worthy. Of course, the 1984 Donruss Mattingly. I'm surprised this didn't get in last year, to be honest with you. But then again, the this type of voting really does highlight what people collect and what their favorites are that are out there, and kind of the generation that you're in. For my generation, this card was the holy grail of the 1980s. I think I remember this being the one card I always wanted. Everybody always wanted. I finally got a hold of one when I got a little older, so I was pretty happy when I got it. And I think this card is definitely worthy of Hall of Fame consideration. Again, another one in the 1980s, 1985 Topps. I think we all know the 1985 Topps Mark McGwire is a big, big card. Back in its day, it still is pretty sought after to, even today. So I think it's definitely Hall of Fame worthy. For me, the 1986 Topps traded Barry Bonds was a huge card. I don't know if anybody has voted for this card yet, but he is probably going to make it into the Hall of Fame. I would imagine at some point. He's definitely a Hall of Fame worthy player. His cards you know, are very undervalued at this point, in my opinion. This was a card that was hard to get because it was in the traded set. And I could be wrong, but I believe back then they only sold traded sets as a set. They didn't sell them in hobby boxes or packs like they do today. So in order for you to get this, somebody would have had to break up a set. So it was pretty rare to get one of these. And but as he got popular in the 90s, this card started to become pretty sought after. I don't think anybody's mentioned the 1982 Cal Ripken card. Now, I know the traded might be more valuable, I guess, but this rookie card, I just remember when I was starting out my collection in the late 80s that everybody wanted a Ripken card. I mean, he was one of the faces of baseball in the 1980s and 90s, and he may not be the flashiest player to have ever played the game, but I think his reputation is really better than most as far as the character and the kind of person that he was, both as a player and as a person. So, everybody's voting for his brother's card in 1989 Fleer because of its rarity and its popularity. But as a player, as a rookie card, as something that you need in your collection, this is definitely one of those cards. So I'm surprised it hasn't gotten many votes. I think there's other cards in the 1980s that can get votes that are just like this one, but that might be for later classes than the second one. So I hope everybody starts considering a card like this. Now, for me in the 1980s, when you were collecting cards, a lot of people were also focusing on other decades like the 70s. And I remember two cards in particular because of the player that they were and the team that they were on uh, being very popular. The first one being the 1975 rookie card of George Brett. I mean, the first thing you notice about this card is the coloring of it. Today, color means a very different thing than it did back then in the 1970s. This particular card was highly sought after back in the 80s when I was collecting. Everybody, of course, wanted to have a Brett rookie. He was a great player. The Kansas City Royals were a really strong team for most of the decade. I think they went to one or two World Series back then, and of course they had the infamous, pine tar incident in what was it, Yankee Stadium, and so he was a very well-known player, very solid player. So everybody really feared him in the league, and I think that back then, his rookie card was everybody would wanted to have one. I certainly wanted to have one. I've never gotten a hold of one. I probably could go and buy it now for a reasonable price, but I think it's definitely card worthy for the Hall of Fame because just the look of it, it characterizes the 1970s so well with the coloring, and I think that it's just one of those cards that has to be in at some point. Alongside of it is the 1975 Robin Yount rookie, kind of the same story along the lines of one of the greatest players that has ever played in that decade, in that time period, for a small market team, I guess you could say, and him and Paul Molitor just made the Brewers. I mean, you put the Brewers on the map back then, and another Hall of Fame player, Hall of Fame character, just a fantastic human being as well as player. So, again, the coloring is just great. To get a really gem mint card from this era is so hard, and so when you have one, I think it's definitely a Hall of Fame worthy card. So the last couple are going to be more. I'm sorry, I do have one more vintage. I don't know why this card's not in it. Pete Rose deserves to be in the Hall of Fame just as a player. So I think his rookie card should be in the Hall of Fame. Whether you believe he should be in the Hall of Fame in Major League Baseball or not, I think this card is just one of those iconic cards from the 1960s. You're talking about the all-time hit king here, so I don't know why he wouldn't be worthy of being in the Card Hall of Fame. Couple of modern day cards. I do agree with some of you that the SP Derek Jeter foil card should be in the Hall of Fame. Definitely one of those rookie cards that has blossomed over the last several years. So I think it has moved it into consideration. And of course, the last card would be the 2011 Topps update of Mike Trout. I mean, let's face it, if he were to retire today, he's still a Hall of Famer. And so I think this card I think Wesker Griff said it perfectly that this is going to be the card of this generation. So, it definitely deserves to be in. I don't know why it hasn't gotten in yet. So those are my votes. Hope everybody's doing well. I will have a contest update in a couple of days. I've been getting a few more submissions in, so I'm looking to possibly run the contest next week to get the winners, and so hopefully everybody will have some time to put an entry in. I will talk to you guys soon. See ya.